Yes. So Alexandros Karagyris received a PhD in computer science, and he was with the National Library of Medicine of the NIH between 2010, 2016, then senior software engineering researcher at IBM until 2020. And he is now a senior researcher at the Institute of Image-Guided Surgery at IHU Strasbourg, the city where I'm from. And his research areas include medical imaging, machine learning, and Dr. Karagyris is notably behind MedPerf, an open source platform for benchmarking AI models with applications in federated learning, which he will be presenting today. Thank you very much for agreeing to give a talk.
Thank you so much, Julian. And thank you, John and Michael, also for the invitations. I'm new to this group, and it's super exciting to get the opportunity to present also first. So I'm going to be talking about today about MedPerf, which is basically like Julian said, an open sourced framework platform that allows evaluation of medical ML on federated, data sets. And this links very much to what John said in the introduction. We need more data to train, but also we need, the effort to validate basically models across diverse data sets. So this is the effort, creating, this framework. And I'm going to go and talk a little bit about, the organization behind it. And then I'm going to dive into our working group as well as, the platform itself. It's a high-level introduction. We're kind of, new to this area, but we've been, working closely also with UPenn and Sarthak, who's, on the call today. He's going to present FETs. So without further ado, I'm going to start talking about this. So some of us are, the working group. There are many more, but we have people from academia and also from the tech industry working closely to develop, best practices around evaluation, benchmarking of machine learning. And just, to dive into a little bit more what, this organization is basically MLCommons. The MLCommons was founded back in 2022. It's a nonprofit which, aims at helping with the machine learning innovation. It originally started with focus on machine learning benchmarks before it get founded as a nonprofit. The organization is basically built on 3 pillars. There is the benchmark pillar, which there is a specific suite that supports benchmarking for hardware. There is the data set pillar where companies and academics work closely to generate data sets for machine learning. And one of them is, the people's speech, it's more than 7,000 hours of diverse speech. And finally, the last pillar is, the best practices where, tools and methods are developed to improve machine learning. And what connects all of them is basically the underlying research community. And I need to emphasize here that MLCommons is, very research focused and functions within multiple working groups, which I'm going to talk a little bit, later. However, the uniqueness, I would say, it's, it drives me to brag about it, is MLCommons allows, mature research to translate into meaningful outputs like best practices or, benchmarks. Just to give a high level to understand, how big, the MLCommons is, it's supported by more than 50 organizations. And you can recognize some of, these companies here. And usually, I think I hear somebody is okay. It's mostly, supported by hardware players, big tech players, but as always, academics, support, this input. And they work closely along with, the academics to produce better, results. Focusing back to the research, basically part of, MLCommons, which is the foundation, there's, recent working groups. And I need to emphasize that, these groups are very open and, welcoming tech as well academics. As of now, there are 6, research groups. Some of them include, the algorithmic research groups, which are focusing on benchmarking algorithms. And they're general, it's not just focused on medical ML. And then we have, the medical Karagyris group, which I represent today, and I'm going to be talking more about it. There is the DataPerf, working group, which aims for research and develop of benchmarks for data sets. So how do you benchmark, the quality of the data sets? And MLCommons manages to support, the research groups, including ours, with resources to allow these groups to mature and graduate and become more sustainable, groups. So in our medical, accuracy group, we've been working towards extending machine learning benchmarking on medical data federations. We currently develop Gandalf as well, which Sarthak is going to talk about it, and MedPerf, which are two open source, projects. Gandalf focuses on medical ML pipelines. MedPerf is an open platform to help facilitate evaluation of medical AI in federated settings, where data reside in multiple geographically distributed institutions. And, fundamentally, MedPerf builds upon 3 pillars: the best practices that were developed and being developed at MLCommons. Second, with rigorous, benchmarks, we are allowed to follow, the expertise that we have inside, this community at MLCommons. And of course, with the third pillar is to open collaborative community, which you guys are promoting as well here. So what is the rationale why we're doing this? It's been, talked to many times, and, also here in this working group, I believe. Benchmarking has proven to be critical for the improvement of entire industries. And this is, fundamental. We saw this with, MLCommons and with the hardware accelerators. And this has also, in a similar way, and taking for lessons from, the success of these benchmarks, at MLCommons, we believe that, same approach and same, philosophy of benchmarking within, the medical, AI space can drive this clinical impact and in translation to improve, the healthcare, delivery. So just as, I would say benchmarking development in MLCommons happens with a very technical and concise process, we want to bring, this into the ML community, the medical ML community, and bring together, stakeholders, because, healthcare itself, we know that, there's so many different, stakeholders participating, contributing to be able to reach, basically the development of products and solutions. So we want to support, consortia. That's, a fundamental, ethos that aim on targeting basically clinically important problems. This is how we address this. But we want to help improve AI by generalizing well across different parts of the world. So we have a global, basically aim. And we want to shorten basically this translation, as you can see, basically in this arrow, hopefully by addressing some of the challenges. So we're going to do that. And, going them through, development best practices. Because, fundamentally, and this, I think a big question that we have to ask ourselves, I mean, what is the point of building ML models that do not have direct, clinical impact, right? And I think, through this benchmarking and validation on a global level, I think we are hoping that we can, address some of these challenges. Just, to give a little bit of overview where we are right now. We're kind of new, slightly new, a little bit more than a year. We're quiet, but this, this effort has been, has a strong team from the tech industry, as you can see some of the players before, as well as academia. We have full-time engineers as well, multiple software and research engineers from the industry helping with the development of MedPerf. And last year we carried a decent feasibility study across different partners. One of them, I'm representing University of Strasbourg and IHU, and we have a paper under review at Nature Machine Intelligence, and we describe basically the challenges we faced, the potential and the opportunities. And lastly, I want to emphasize that last MICAI 2022, MedPerf was used as the infrastructure to support federated evaluation of machine learning models. And we are planning to continue this effort this year, extend it to a continuous evaluation, which I think is going to be like more interesting, challenges from a resource, computational resources, perspective, right? And we have more information, and I put it here, and I can share later on the chat on, the MedPerf. I'm gonna, because I'm sure you're gonna be interested a little bit understanding the philosophy of, MedPerf. It's very simple, and I would like to introduce you today if I have some time. So from, design philosophy, MedPerf is more than a technical infrastructure. It tries to capture, organizations, stakeholders, and roles and workflows to successfully facilitate the benchmarking, in the medical ML space. Specifically at the core of, the benchmark initiative lies the benchmark group. The benchmark group, or, what we call sometimes benchmark champion, is the ultimate authority to create the reference implementation, to set the policies for the participation of, the model developers, and define, any legal aspects, around, the benchmarking, as well to be able to call out, a participation for the, the benchmark. I mean, you can think of the benchmark group as a diverse group of global experts, right? In a particular, medical domain, let's say like today, multiple sclerosis, that comes together, identify a clinically impactful task, and that, they believe that the machine learning, can, help tackle. And then subsequently, the benchmark group defines the reference implementation, how it's supposed to be, the data preparation that, also John, kind of alluded to, that's very important, right? The source code for the evaluation, the metrics, because, there's no benchmarking without, the specific metrics. So it's a very particular and important aspect of measuring the quality of the machine learning systems related to the clinical problem. And, the benchmark group is going to make a call to the participation of potential, participants. So there's also basically the data owners, which are the data providers, hospitals, if you will, research, institutions, and these are, participate in the benchmark. And then they provide, if you will, access internally to the data, to the benchmark. And nothing leaves, and it's important, I need to highlight that, because under the idea of data sharing, nothing leaves the premises of the data providers. Everything stays locally in silo. And I'm going to show you a little bit of, the architecture and how, things run on MedPerf. And finally, the last group, it's the model owners and the model developers, which are the participants. There could be software vendors that they want to validate the quality, the performance of the machine learning models. So from a design perspective, we have at a very high level two parts. We have the MedPerf server, which is kind of central server, and the MedPerf client. And the MedPerf server runs centrally at the benchmark group, for example, with multiple sclerosis working group. And it's basically the entry point for model users, data owners, benchmark groups to be able to register the data, register the models, register the benchmark itself, the reference implementation. And on the other side, we have the MedPerf client, which runs inside the data provider. And it's a very, very thin, small software running on allowing the execution of containers. We specifically use that from best practice ML, our MLCommons, MLcubes. The MLcubes are reviewed, the containers more or less, I don't want to confuse you people, containers are reviewed and signed by the benchmark group to maintain highest level of integrity. And then the data owner has to manually approve the execution of the containers within the premises for a particular benchmark. So because again, our top priority is to make the benchmark execution as secure and safe for participating in data providers. Again, I just want to highlight that, this is, and you will see from other speakers, we are facing similar problems and challenges when it comes to, privacy of the models and security, right? This still, persists. But we try to minimize it because we're focusing more on the evaluation, right? So we're kind of trying to minimize some of these challenges. Now, again, this is a high level picture description of the roles, and we have the APIs from the MedPerf server side, and there again to reiterate, there are three types of users. We have the benchmark group, the model owner, and data provider, and each one of them are given permissions to specific APIs, such as like I said, register a new benchmark, or the data provider to prepare the data internally based on the benchmark a blueprint, the reference implementation, and then register the metadata into a database in the central way at the benchmark group. And we have more information on the MedPerf fork. We have, I think, quite detailed documentation. We're welcome to suggestions, and please open any toolkits we have GitHub. So so what happens when on the client side, right? So we have the MedPerf CLI, the command line interface, which runs inside the data provider's premises, and it aims at delivering two things: the data preparation based on the particular benchmark, how it's defined, how you're supposed to prepare the data, how you're supposed to standardize, process it, and then subsequently, when there is a request for an execution of a benchmark, let's say you have a particular model you want to test against, then this is the first there is a execution of the benchmark, and then when you prepare the data for the data preparation side, there's 3 steps. And then all these medical data formats, like we said, it needs to map to a standard format. There's also a sanity check that we can ensure that the data pass, specific tests that are, specified by the benchmark group. And finally, the statistics, the overall statistics are calculated over, the prepared data to better understand, how our capture, the underlying problem, and also it can be helpful for sanity and also comparing, different data providers across a large network of federations. And so again, I need to emphasize here, there's no data, private or data, shared with, anyone outside in the data provider. And when we're doing, basically, the execution is a very similar way. There's a model that's wrapped in the container, and it makes a request to the different data providers. The administrative person or the data provider side has to manually accept and execute the container, and then the results are overall statistics that are they need to approve and then send back to the benchmark server. I'm gonna stop a little bit here, with the technical description, because I'm sure I'm running a little bit behind. There's much more under the hood. As I said, it's better to go to the website and to read more about it. And we also have a white paper. So how you can get involved? Please consider joining the medical Karagyris group, which is very open. You can help drive the best practices around evaluation and validation of medical ML, and beyond that. And also, if you're interested as a group or any other group, or we can help with you starting a benchmark around clinically impactful task. As I said, and I need to re-emphasize on that for the participants, we're a very open organization. And then, there are many options you can be part of. Join us, at the mailing list, attend community events, and become a member. It's free for academics. For common, it's a little bit more interesting and complicated, but there's a membership fee. And then, you can also reach out to us on these links. And looking forward to this wonderful discussion.
Thank you very much. So let's open the floor for questions. And we have a first question from Varun Vasudev. Can you please give an example of benchmark in what you presented? I think there was the FETs, which will be
the FETs, yeah.
Later.
So So Sarthak is going to be talking more about this. This took place over September 2022. And before that, of course, it was a tremendous effort. More than that, hospitals, we are focused on, like I said, because it's a platform for evaluation, we focus on supporting the evaluation part of, the VETS challenge. And we believe, that, this year we're going to have, a more, I would say, larger federation. There are going to be more challenges about, the computation resources. We collect, feedback from the users. We have some strategy to improve the client, for example, to have some web interface, because on the other end, where, these administrative people, from the side, they have to execute the benchmarks. Well, not only that, they have to also register the data, to prepare the data. It's challenging for them sometimes to work on the command line and execute this. So we are intending to improve the support and also the interface to help, navigate, the preparation of the data, get a better feedback, from the errors. So it's a lot of, technical basically developments where we got, excellent feedback last year.
Thank you. So, yeah, we have another question from Vijay. Does MedPerf support signed models in the registry that are trusted and bypass any quarantine on the data provider end?
So at this point, at this moment, we're working closely with already established consortia, and that we know that even the participants are trusted, and they, we assume that there's this mutual trust across the consortia. I need to emphasize again that there's open challenges that we want to address, like specifically for the evaluation. We need to make sure there's trusted execution, and also making sure there's a privacy IP protection, model IP protection for the model developers to be able to expand and scale basically the participation. But I need again to emphasize that nothing basically leaves the premises of the data providers, right? So our philosophy right now at this moment is focused on data privacy, because I feel like there's a higher risk. I'm not trying to diminish the risk of model IP theft, but I know we're kind of creating baby steps to get there. And I'm very open to discussions, because these are challenges that the whole community in federal learning faces at this moment.
Thanks. We have another question from Aman. How MedPerf handles the instrument bias which might come up during the collection of the data, which again affects the model? Yeah,
this is an excellent question, and this is where we would like to emphasize that our starting core, basically entry point and initiating point, is the benchmark group. This is where we want to bring basically different experts from different backgrounds, but for example, computer scientists like Sarthak, me, myself, I've been working extensively on the particular domain and understand basically the intricacies of the data diversity, and that's why I want to emphasize that we want to have data preparation pipeline that helps to basically map in a standardized way all the different diverse inputs, right? It's an open question. I mean, it's like a chicken egg situation. You try to address to improve the model generability. You try to improve the data preparation. But it's like what Jiang said before. There's I see two sides of the same coin. How much you need to come to bring the community closer, to bring better standardizations, right? And how much that you're more supposed to generalize a different across different diverse data, right? So it's a dual effort, I feel like, and again, we don't have the whole the magic bullet, but to answer your question, it's all about the benchmark group to be able to build this reference implementation that helps the data preparation and standardization across all the different data providers that participate in the benchmark, right? So this is every time a new data provider is added, need to review and address any distribution shifts.
Thanks. I'm sure the instrument bias is something that we'll talk about later during the discussion. There's another one about beads. Is MedPerf parallel to beads formatting for open science and sharing?
Not to my knowledge, no. We haven't explored this yet, but it would be interesting to. We're open to other initiatives. We like OG, for example. Sarthak, anything to add here?
Yeah. So actually, it's very interesting. This question came up. We were having this discussion a couple of days back. So MedPerf is actually compatible with the BID standard. So there shouldn't be a problem. So if you already have your data set defined in the BIDS format, we should be able to use it in MedPerf without pretty much any overhead.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess that's another point of discussion for later, which is quite important. We have also a question from Ron Henry. Do you have any template agreements for institutions that may require them for both data and IP?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. This is something we're going to be working this year to kind of standardize, make things smoother. We're going to be working very closely with the consortia and something we need to. It's still an open question that we need to address, and who's going to basically be in charge. But we have some ideas around that. But I'm open again to any suggestions and any directions.
Thank you. And one question from Michael. Can you describe a little bit more about the MLCubes approach?
Yeah. So I didn't want to confuse people, but the fundamentally MLCubes are containers. It allows basically to chain together containers and interface them very, very nicely and streamlined. There's a whole basically group around this within MLCommons focused on best practices. What it allows, like I said, to chain big pipelines. But for simplicity right now, and it's easy to transfer basically a Docker container into MLCube. We just look at a configuration file like a YAML that shows the inputs and the outputs. So the conversion is easily, and we are also working in some transformations so that automatically we can take Docker containers, transforming basically to MLCubes to make it easier for the community. But there's a whole basically group that focuses on developing the MLCubes, and there's a whole documentation about that.
Good. Okay, so it's we are like 2 minutes in advance on the schedule, but I think it would be a good time to switch to the next talk. Thank you again very much, Alexandros, for your talk, and I hope you stay later for our discussion.